No.
Sorry, push the wrong button there. It is being recorded.
I wonder if we all need to be on mute while one speaks.
Yeah, that might help. Yeah.
Okay, now is it better now? It's better now. So that worked at least from here. Let me know if it doesn't work with you guys, if you're still hearing echoing, but it definitely doesn't hear as much echo now. So the career ladder is a funding mechanism. It is how you're funded for your salary-based apportionment. But most districts in the state, they do not have, because a career ladder is actually just 13 steps this way. It doesn't have, like most have salary matrix where you have, here's your first year and then you add 10 credits and you go down by years of experience and you go over by your credits you have, BA plus 16, 24, and you go over this way. So most districts have that salary matrix, which is different than a career ladder, but we're funded, every district is funded on the career ladder. So that's where people are placed. Every district is funded that way. So in essence, every certified employee is placed on the career ladder, a resident 1, 2, or 3, a P1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or now this new APE, advanced professional year 1, and next year it will be year 2 and on from there. So every district has their employees, the certified, are placed on the career ladder, and that's how we're funded. Also through that weighted average that Brian was telling you guys about, but that's not how we pay our people. So to answer your question, yes, this is the first year that we have the advanced professional APE money that's going through that. And that's what the MOU is designed to fulfill. But is this the first year we're using career ladder? No, because it's been that way for the last couple of years as the state changed the funding mechanism. But that's not how we pay our people, because our district has the salary matrix. Does that make sense?
It does. So have we received the APE endorsement money from the state, or are we waiting to receive that? Because I was curious why, if staff is assigned to the AP rung 1, they're receiving a one-time $2,000 stipend. I don't understand that.
So the governor changed this mid-year this year. Remember, he was trying to get, well, my opinion is he was trying to get some political capital. And remember, he held back our discretionary funds and says, well, I'm going to fund the career ladder 100%. I'm going to get that last part of the career ladder that we promised you guys 4 years ago. We promised this last part of the career ladder would come. But he then said, I'm going to continue funding that. You guys will get that last AP, that money, because that APE money is designed to help the upper end of the people that have been the veteran teachers that have been here for a while. That's what that's supposed to help fund that. Now he knows over 90% of districts pay over what the career ladder does anyway. So he's using it as a funding mechanism, saying we're going to fill in that gap. But as Ramona told you at the last board meeting, our IBB team is recommending that we put that as flow through money to those teachers instead of just putting it in the big pot and spreading it out evenly.
Okay, so then those that are on the AP rung, whichever rung that is, they will receive their money that they would be receiving for being on that matrix ladder, whatever.
And that was our proposal, is the MOU for people that have made it this year. They would get that in their June or July paycheck. I can't remember. Ramona, do you remember which paycheck that comes in?
You're muted.
I don't remember exactly what month that was, or that was decided on. It's probably in the notes. I think part of the other thing is that what we did learn is when the state funds this money for the APE money or the AP money, it's all sort of goes together. It doesn't come on its own line item. So it's literally in the salary-based apportionment. You would have to understand that if the base pay was 50,000 and you were funded 52,000, oh, it's because 2,000 of it is APE money. So if you have a handful of teachers in the same area of that pay scale, and 3 of them have APE money and 3 of them don't, or 2 of them don't, it's not split out. So it really is all mishmashed together, even though it makes it sound like it's individualized. So it's not as easily identified either. And all this just went through last legislative session, I believe it was.
Okay. Okay, and then, so that does clarify a lot with that. On one of the financial updates that were provided, documents that we were given, Ramona, do you want to mute? I don't know if I don't know where it's coming from. Okay. It states that overages will come from the district's discretionary funds. What is the amount of the district's discretionary funds, and how are the funds allocated? I mean, because when I think discretionary, that to me means you get to use them not necessarily however you want, but they're subjective. But I don't know, and if I could have a better understanding of that, that'd be great.
Board Chair Thompson, are you asking about in the negotiated agreement the elementary overages for when their class size goes over those recommended amounts? Is that what you're asking?
No, this is on one of the financial documents we were provided. There was a statement that said overages will come from the district's discretionary fund. So my question is,
overages for what?
I don't know. I just copied the statement over because I wanted to find out.
The only overages that I know about are unless you can point me to exactly which document you're talking about, the only overages that we had in the negotiated agreement was class size overages for elementary school teachers.
Mm-hmm.
If they totals that we had, then we had the overages, and it ended up being about $10,000. We don't have them this year. They're very, very small this year because of the COVID, the social distancing. We didn't have that overages. But last year when we had that in place, it was the first year in the negotiated agreement, and it was like just over 10,000 for the whole year. And the discretionary funds that it came from was just the regular general fund, and Brian just paid it out of the general fund.
Okay. Because there was a comment that we're contemplating using ESSER funds for the 2000 advanced placement funds this year. Are we doing that? And can we do that? And why? If the funds came
you say
the
that
regular
one more time,
way.
I'm trying to process what you said. There was a discussion.
No worries. My question was, why are we using or contemplating to use ESSER funds, ESSR funds for the 2000 AP funds this year? I was curious if the district was not paid by the State Department for the advanced placements.
No,
and how can we use ESSER?
We are not doing that, using ESSER funds for that, as far as that maybe was somebody's idea, but that isn't what I am understanding from talking to Brian, because we will be getting, to Ramona's point, she said that we'll be getting that money in our salary-based apportionment, and that would be flow through money. It would not come from ESSER funds as far as I know.
Okay, Ramona, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I think ESSER funds was in the agreement for the drop days part of the agreement. So it didn't have to do with the APE money, but for the overall increase of the 1.25 with the adopted, of course, if all this is ratified, the adopted new extracurricular schedule, and then a couple of drop days. And that was as a reward, supplement, whatever you want to call it, for all of the extra time that was put in during the whole this past year, COVID and all of those things that happened. So that I think is what you're thinking about, the ESSER funds. And then I found the other part that you were relating to actually came from the agenda notes.
Okay.
Overages will come from district's discretionary funds. That's because the PESF funds, the stabilization funds have been locked for 2 years, or my brain can't think of the word. Anyways, so those were just sort of note taking in our discussion. When you look at the agenda, that was sort of a discussion on these things as we went through there. And that's what that was talking about. We were trying to figure out, because once again, according to what Brian had found out, and of course this is seems to be an extremely fluid situation and nothing really written in stone, was that I believe at some point we had somewhere near $1.4 million less, if not more, to be funded from the state. And I remember half a million from the PESF funds, and then there was a $500,000 anyways. So that's probably where that overages will come from, the district's discretionary funds.
Okay.
To make up for the cuts, basically, that we're still anticipating, and obviously the board knows they haven't even seen those budgetary deems yet. Okay.
Moving on to the actual agreement under extracurricular coach salary schedule, item 3, part 1. The agreement states payments of stipends will be in accordance with Board of Trustee policy. However, it doesn't identify which policy. And the policy should be identified to ensure the agreement and the policy are congruent. And I would like to know, why is the only factor for determining the stipends the years of experience and a step ladder? That just doesn't seem, I mean, I would think there would need to be more measured weight when you're giving someone increases in the stipend, such as reviews, attrition in the program, etc. Is that not considered?
Madam Chair, I asked the same thing, and I guess I was told, it's my understanding, that the coaches do have a type of, I don't know if it is an IPLP or something similar, in which they do have an evaluation on. And they said they would be happy to share one of those with us. So we might ask again. I haven't received anything as of today, or not that I'm aware of. It could be buried in some email. And then the other thing I was reminded is that the sports are more about relationship with the kids than winning or losing.
But do we ever look at if children are continuing and returning? I mean,
I have no idea. I don't know.
Dr. Meyer, do you know if we do that? Do we look at that, the student involvement, and if there's, if the students continue to return to the program or if they just quit or stuff like that?
Yeah, they do keep retention, and then they do talk about the numbers, because that's got brought up with me several times by one of the principals about one of the certain programs, and how the numbers have been slowly dwindling over the last 5 years. So that is something they talk about, but I don't know if that's based in the evaluation piece. Their evaluation is not an IPLP. It's a very simple, and that's something we can certainly create. Trustee Grissom talked about maybe having some standing committees. This would probably be a very well sought after, I think, from people in the community, standing committee. If the board was interested in doing that kind of committee, Trustee Grissom talked about that last board meeting. That certainly could be something that the board would want to do in moving forward.
Okay, because It bothers me that the sole purpose for increase in a stipend is longevity in the district, and it has actually nothing to do with the sport or the activity or the advisory position that the person is holding. I don't see how that's equitable for the students or for the district. And under the experience step guidelines, just for clarification, on the senior high table, there's an asterisk next to chair, but not next to dance. However, the notation for the asterisk at the bottom of the table identifies that chair and dance receiving an additional 50% stipend if their team participates in competition season.
Yeah, that just is a mistake on the clerical part. It should be on dance team as well.
Okay.
So
I'll write that
down.
Okay, perfect. What is the additional 50% stipend based off of?
So if they cheerleading and dance are a year round, which most, we already talked about, head coaches really are doing things year round, but legitimately they have 3 seasons that they have to coach. One of them is called a competition season, where they actually do competitions and their whole deal, and then they have to go down to state. If they don't do competition, they don't get that extra stipend. So they're really only getting 1.5 stipend to do all 3 seasons, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, not really, because the stipends are based on a percentage, and it states that, you know, head or varsity is 15.5% and assistant coach is 11. But then we're saying they'll get an additional 50% stipend, but 50% of what?
Of their total stipend.
So they'll get an additional half of their stipend.
So what I'm saying is they have to do 3 full seasons. They only get paid 1.5. They don't. They all voted on this a couple of years ago. Both the dance coach agreed, and both ADs and the principals agreed. They have 3 seasons. Every other head coach only is responsible for competition in 1 season. These guys have to do supervision and evaluation and supervision of their kids in practice. They have to do it all 3 seasons, because they do fall, winter, and spring. But if they do so, and they only get 1, and they have to do 3 seasons, and they only get 1 stipend. But if they do competition, where they do the competition where they can go to state for competition for them, they get an additional half of a stipend. So they really only get a 1.5 for doing 3. I thought they should get 2, because it's a lot of work, but nobody else agreed, and they all voted to do the 1.5. And at the time, those coaches thought it was fine, so that's what it is.
Okay.
I think it's a lot of work. Like, I would never want to be a cheer or dance, because I think they're doing a ton of work for what they get paid.
Correct.
Yeah, in my opinion.
I hear you. Now, I was just curious why in the senior high table under non-athletic positions are these positions compensated at a significantly less percentage?
Wait, say that again, because I'm highlighting this to show that we're changing this. Put the asterisks here.
Oh, not a worry. In the same section, the senior high table, the non-athletic positions appear to be compensated at a much lesser percentage than the athletic. And I was just curious why.
So the rationale behind that is because all of those are co-curricular. They have classes for them in school. So they're doing a lot of their work inside the school day with the students, and there is some after school hours, but not the same level of the coaching is completely 100% after school, and a lot more, different traveling and stuff.
Okay. So you're saying that a lot of these are done, like you said, co-curricular during school hours, but I mean, I checked with the other school districts and they don't seem to compensate for all that we're stipending. It seems a lot.
I guess I don't ask, I don't know what your question is about that.
Well, I guess I don't understand why we're stipending so many positions. If they're co-curricular, if they're occurring during school.
These specifically the band, choir, speech arts, yearbook, drama, newspaper, ASB, leadership advisor one?
Those, let me see here, let me pull up the IBB. I'm working on a small screen, so I'm selective about what I pull up. Hang on a sec. Well, that's
I can speak to the senior high ones that are right underneath the
okay.
Head coach ones that we were just talking about. And I just put the turquoise on that dance team so we can add that.
Perfect.
Those band, choir, speech, yearbook, drama, newspaper, and ASB, they have several after school hours. The way, this was before I got here, but the way they came up with the percentage was the number of hours outside of contract time that these advisors were doing outside with students outside of contract time. That's how they came up with those hours.
Okay.
Similar to down below when we added the FFA this year and we talked about it, Trustee Grissom can tell you we had them keep track and they reported back of how many hours it was taking, which is why that FFA one is specifically the same as a head coach because of the number of hours that advisor has to spend with the required things. That's why the FFA one is so high. So these are all based on hours outside of contract time that advisors are spending with kids doing required work.
Okay.
Trustee Grissom, do you want to add to that?
I think you said everything that I remember that I was aware of. Sorry, I was trying to find the policy reference to the stipend payment. Yeah, as far as why we're stipending stuff that other districts aren't, I guess that's just because what came to the table. And also just so the trustees know that I wasn't present at the first meeting, which was the issues meeting. I had a family emergency. And secondly, we didn't cover the entirety of the negotiated agreement. In the interest-based bargaining, both sides brought their issues and only those issues that were brought is what was addressed. So although there might be a lot of other things, you know, within the document itself, the negotiated agreement, like the reference to the policy, which I think 5480 is the only one I can find. I don't know that it fits particularly well. So I think Dr. Meyer covered everything else as far as why the difference in the stipending, you know, based upon how many hours are addressed, but and then whatever was brought for issues or topics that I think that was put on the agenda that I shared with you guys, and then you'll see as we they were scratched out.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, Board Chair Thompson, if other districts maybe have this in a different spot, because I don't know of many school districts that don't have a stipend. The ASB leadership, like that is a lot of work outside of contract time. And I don't know of any districts that don't have a stipend for that type of position, same as yearbook and band. So those would be ones that I would be.
Well, the arts, I understand because they do activities. I mean, the concerts that are held, the drama productions, the competitive speech. I understand all of that, but it just gets a little overwhelming when it looks like everything is being stipend. And when I compare us with other districts and see that, you know, this isn't included in anywhere else in any other district, it just bothers me because I know the constituents are question, what do we spend our money on? And I don't know that they realize that there are all these different avenues that we're stipending teachers for. I am concerned about why SOS is now being added to the stipending program, because it was my understanding that this program is not, I mean, it's grant funded, number one. It's not curriculum. So I don't understand what's being taught after hours, because we were told this is done during school. So I don't understand, nor do I agree with this.
Yeah, Trustee Grissom brought the same thing up in the discussion, and that's why the elementary one was taken off. We did some follow-up with that. The response back for the middle and high school level was there was student activities that happened after contract hours that the advisors were required to be there at. And that was the discussion for those. There was not a curriculum discussion about that. These were activities that, my understanding is the SOS activities were school-wide healthy, non-drug healthy activities that families and students were invited to have healthy activities to do together, and that those advisors were responsible for being in charge of those. But Trustee Grissom can certainly weigh in on that piece, because she had the same question, Board Chair Thompson.
Yeah, I don't really have any more to add to it other than that. I'm in agreement. I don't think it should be stipend either. The board never approved the program. So I know supposedly the board prior to us had some knowledge, but I haven't seen that either. So I don't know.
And the next step would be if the board, if the majority of the board doesn't feel like that should be in here, the next step would be that I would, Trustee Grissom and I would tell the LEA leadership, hey, our board is not feeling good about this. We need to come back to the table, and it doesn't look like that's going to be something that they're going to want to approve. So to stop it before it gets to an actual public board meeting where the whole board votes, I would just give them a heads up that this would be something that doesn't look like it's going to get approval, so that they would be able to talk to their leadership and say, okay, let's take it out. And that everybody on the IBB team would be willing to do that and discuss it more next year as to what took place in it, what are the hours outside, and bring more information to the IBB team for next year. That would be my suggestion if the majority of the board is in agreement that they don't want that in there.
I think that it is definitely to get more information on next year, and it isn't something that I can get on board with this year.
Okay, Randy, do you have any input on that?
No, I don't know enough about the program to, I guess, to give a qualifying position or opinion on it.
Okay, not a problem. So I don't know, Dr. Meyer, if you want to address this prior to it coming to the board for a vote, but that does concern me. This program is supposedly grant funded. The school expenses no money on it. It's not been approved by the board, and it just keeps going full board ahead. And now we're wanting to take district monies and stipend it, which I don't understand how we got to this point.
Yeah, so I will certainly talk to the leadership and tell them that because if three of you voiced your opinions that you're not on board with it, then that's a majority. So I need to tell them that that's not going to, doesn't look like that would make it in the negotiated agreement, so that we need to remove that. And I'll talk to the IBB team about that electronically. I'll do that and give people a heads up, but I'll give Jason a heads up so he understands where it's coming from. We need to do more research about it and discuss it more with the board before it would get approved by the board to be on the negotiated agreement.
Okay, that sounds fair. Under the same section, under C, which is not titled, it's a new paragraph that's added to the agreement. it addresses new or additional assignments or programs and states these are brought before the board for approval after approval from the district and LEA. However, it then states a per head amount, I think. What is this amount for, and how or who determined this before the program was even created?
So how this was created is in the negotiated agreement. When I became the superintendent, they had something, and it's in here somewhere where you can see strikeouts.
Right.
They had, it's earlier in here. They had a program that was called Extra Pay for Extra Duty. And there was a paper application where anybody in the entire district could fill out a paper application saying, I want to do this new thing. And they could make up anything, gun safety, cougar patch, after school homework club. And then when my first year as a superintendent, there was like, can you see my hands? There was
Yes,
like,
I can.
okay, there was like this many pieces of paper, and it says that the superintendent and the LEA president sat down together, and they just approved which ones they want and didn't approve, and then they have to pay for them for that year. And this happened in September. So I said, wait, we can't do this. The budgeting takes place in March the prior year. I don't want to be responsible for adding new monies to a budget when there's a negative $12,000, 666 budget that we're adding money to. So I said, we're not doing that. So I denied all of those, and Jason and we came up with a system. You have to put it in, we've just been baby stepping. In March, you can do an approval. We'll say whether we're going to approve it or not. And then I said, why am I and Jason approving them when we don't know what the buildings need? Why can't it be closer to where the kids are? And it's not happening at the district level. Why can't it happen in the buildings? So we changed it to the buildings, and we showed Ramona, there's different spreadsheets we'd have every year, and the amount has stayed the same. So what we did last year is we figured out how much was it per elementary, middle, and alternative school student. We came up with that amount based on what the applications had been for the prior 3 years. So that was the amount. The board can certainly change that amount, but the thing we added this year is the board approval, because that piece is never been in the negotiated agreement. And we felt with Trustee Grissom, we all felt like it was important that the board actually look at that prior. And that hadn't ever been part of the process. So that part's new. The dollar amount is the amount that we've spent the last 3 years on this. And that's the amount we've used. So that's how we came up with that amount. That's the amount that's in the budget that's been allocated. You don't get more than that or less than that. That's a set amount in the budget that Brian puts in for this extra pay for the extra duty thing, which is this new C part. It's always been in here, but we've moved it down to C, and we added the board piece.
Okay, so we're guesstimating $750 per student to stipend the teacher for a program that hasn't been created, and we don't know how much time's involved.
No, we're not stipending the teacher. Okay. Yes, the teacher gets a stipend, but this amount is the amount the building gets. The building gets $750 per how many. So each school gets like however much. I can bring up the spreadsheet. We showed it to Ramona when we were in IBB, and she saw the spreadsheet, and it ends up being it's like $130,000 for the whole district. And each building is funded on how many kids are enrolled in that school. Then that leadership team at that building creates, like, this is the activities after school that we think are going to help our kids. Hunter safety, cougar patch, after school drama. Then they're going to put together a proposal that's going to go to the board for approval, and then it'll go, yes, we can stipend them, and then they get paid.
Okay. Okay. All right. It's a little, I guess, cumbersome to understand when we have so many different advisors, and now we're, I would assume that the programs being created don't fall under any other type of an umbrella. But yes, I would definitely think the board needs to be kind of kept in the loop, because we're spending money, and if it's not been run by the board, I don't understand how it can be happening, so to speak, and do we have policy to support it is the biggest caveat. But okay, I get that. Next,
Let me ask, I'm gonna make sure that Ramona doesn't want to put her 2 cents in on this. I just want it's
that's
a
fine.
lot better than it used to be because again,
Okay.
going 5 years ago, we're making
Yeah.
baby steps. There was this paper and people just applied, and then the superintendent at the district level and the LEA president just decided who got paid. And I guess the board approval came when it must be on the stipend getting paid on the board agenda, must have been how the board was involved. But there never was any rhyme or reason to it. It was whatever the superintendent and LEA president thought would benefit students. And so it's taken 5 years for us to get to this piece. So this is definitely much better than it was 5 years ago. I don't know, Ramona, if you want to add in anything about that.
Hang on a second, Ramona. Dr. Meyer, I just would like you to understand, I have all these questions because I had questions last year and I wasn't allowed to question or present them. And I need to understand. And it's not that I'm saying anything's wrong or that I'm not in agreement, because I do firmly believe our teachers are very underpaid for the amount of time, effort, and all that they do for our students. So I'm not trying to say we need to cut back on monies we spend on teachers. I'm trying to understand how we're spending the money in all of these various stipending areas that I seriously don't think our constituents understand. Because that was a big source of contention with our constituents is we get all this money and where does it go?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand, please don't take my questions as any form of negativity or that anybody's doing anything wrong. Okay, thank you.
I'm definitely not. I just want you to know if we can improve this. Ramona might have some ideas because she sat through those IBB, but I think the only reason I'm saying that Ramona is she saw the spreadsheet that's not linked in here. So she kind of has an idea of the overall picture of what this was we talked about. So she might have a better sense about that.
Okay.
I don't really have anything to add to it, and I'm sorry my brain just is not top notch tonight, but as far as these programs, you're right, they don't fit underneath anything else that typically happens in a school district, like the garden, for instance, or some of the things that Dr. Meyer was talking about. You know, it's more, I would look at these programs are more, from my perspective, more culturally based upon the school.
Okay.
So whatever culturally fits the school, you know, maybe the teachers or whoever would come up with this thing to support their culture, you know.
Okay.
And then of course, you know, once they were proven, you know, then the stipend money and all that would come, because it is above and beyond their regular duty. That's why it's new or additional assignments. And then also to help them, I guess the way this is worded, to meet the leadership endorsement set by the state, you know, in statute, so that they can continue to improve and, you know, get on whatever the rung is they're looking to aspire to.
Okay.
So the one thing on one of those documents, I think it was the agenda, when the team looked at all of these issues, one of the very first things we always asked was, one of the number one things was being recruit and retain, you know, top-notch teachers. But then the other thing was, how does it affect the students? You know, is it a benefit to them? Does it, you know, those were probably two of the top things. And then of course we walked through the other aspects. Can the budget support it? You know, do you think everybody could agree upon it? Blah, 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 that kind of thing. So, but I agree with you, when you start looking at all of it, it does seem a little overwhelming, and it does seem like, you know, you're trying to squeeze an extra dollar from everywhere, but at the same time, the state base pay for a teacher is $40,000. Lakeland pays even more than that because of, you know, where we're at in proximity to Washington and what some of the other districts are paying, because we have to remain competitive, you know, as far as constituents asking about the dollars, but I get it.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Well, thank you for all the clarifications.
yep.
The next is under F for class sizes for teachers, elementary teachers. And I know I did bring this up last year, and I will bring it up again. I firmly believe we need to align more with statute and IDAPA. The negotiated agreement last year didn't, and again, it doesn't this year. I really struggle with the fact that we want to compensate teachers for overcrowding their classrooms, because in my opinion, we shouldn't be overcrowding the classroom. I think it creates a deficit for the teacher and the student. But I also, in a weighted respect, don't think that a teacher should be forced to house an overabundant amount of students in their classroom without consideration for more compensation for that. But how many classes do we have based on the numbers that were presented in that agreement, which I don't agree with? How many classes do we currently have that are overcrowded?
I'd have to research, but I don't think there's any because of social distancing and COVID this year. So this is an anomaly, but I could certainly, that's what I was telling you earlier. I can show you the data. We have spreadsheets from not this year because of COVID, but then last year.
Mhm.
And I think
Right.
it was over 10,000 that we ended up paying, and they keep track of it. So I can share that data, have Brooke share that data with you from last school year.
Okay, do we hire a sufficient amount of staff to influence the overcrowded classrooms?
Yes. So what happens is once you have, and you started the year, then all of a sudden you have 5 people move into 3rd grade at Twin, and all of a sudden you have a little bit of overage. We try the other things in the negotiated agreement. Do we need to see if the family lives close to Garwood and that's a lower class size and we tell the family they need to go there? Do we need to hire a para if there's more? Do we need to hire an additional staff person? We check out all the other things first. If none of those other options are available, then we have then there may be a class size. We make sure they're equal. And then if it pushes one over, then they put in for overage and then they get paid $50 per student over for that month.
Okay. Yeah, it really bothers me that we do that. It's just, it's a me thing. It doesn't align with statute or IDAPA, especially our classroom sizes. But I also, you know, I understand we're juggling space and population growth, and I do understand all that, but I just think it's counterproductive to reward for overcrowding. I think the productive way is to not be overcrowded, or to be won over. And then I was curious on the combo classes, who determines that we're going to have a combo class and why do we have them?
Well, we have combo classes when we set up staffing, and there's not enough staff to have, there's not enough students to have small classes as maybe of 12 or 15 or 16. We can't fund past what we have for staffing. So if there's not enough students and we need to create a combo, then we have to staff for a combo class.
Okay, so the funding determines how much staff we have, not the student size, the student population.
The staffing is based on what we have for staff budget, our projected enrollment. Right now, we're doing it based on projected enrollment, where we're rolling up who we have currently, what our kindergarten pre-registration numbers are, any pre-registration numbers we have, and then we do it based on how our levy is added to that amount and how, because that is helping with class sizes. Otherwise, we'd be like Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene, where we have class sizes, no class sizes under 30, and you know, even at elementary size, because that's how they fund it. That's not how this district. So our district supports that bigger levy to be able to keep reasonable class sizes. So we have that all staffed. Now when it comes until the COVID year, And again,
Right.
we had the emergency levy that's been passed every year, because when we had those bubble class sizes that people registered, and all of a sudden we have a class of 32 and we're like, this is too big and we can't do a combo. We need a whole nother 4th grade teacher to be in here. Then that's what the emergency levy would be at the end of that first week in September. Here's where our bubbles is. And we would tell the board here, and we'd show the class sizes. Here's where we need to add 3 teachers, 4 teachers, however many teachers we need to do to cover these. And this is where we need to do it. And we'd show the board, they'd pass the emergency levy because that doesn't voter. And then that's how we would fund those. This year, we aren't wanting to go to the board. I mean, the board could do it if they wanted to, but based on the conversation as I've heard you all have, based on the fact that we only passed the instructional levy with 42 votes, my recommendation would be that we're using ESSER dollars if we have bubble class sizes. We've already talked to IBB about it, and I've talked to the board already once about my plan would be to add those bubble class sizes based on ESSER dollars and not do an emergency levy, so that we don't add any more to the taxes of the patrons this fall. But that would be a board decision when we get to this fall and we look at what the enrollment, the whites of their eyes, and they show up that first week.
Right. And I do understand that. I know it's hard to budget and plan for the future when the future is so in flux right now. It just really bothers me that we want that everyone within our community has stated small class sizes, but to me, when we're not meeting statute or IDAPA requirements, and then we're funding for overcrowding, I just think that gives the wrong message on every front, because I don't think it's fair to the teacher and I don't think it's fair to the student. That being said, I'll move on. Under section 4.3 association leave, I was really struggling trying to understand that. How often are teachers required to leave for association leave? And what constitutes association leave?
Well, it's only happened a couple of times in my 5 years of being here. If one of them is chosen as a delegate, or for instance, there's one that is allegedly, I don't know if it's gone through, one of our employees is maybe going to be elected or was just elected. I have to double check with Jason. I don't know where it is, but that they were going to be the new vice president of this region of the IEA, then they would be required to go to the delegate assembly, and that then they have to be released because of this. And we just pay for we have to legally release them and pay for the guest teacher.
Okay, well, respecting that, because the statement reads, if the district pays for the cost of the substitutes for attending regularly scheduled official meetings of the State Teachers Association as prescribed by law 33315, then why does the second sentence state the LEA will pay the cost of hiring a substitute for additional association days approved by the superintendent? What does that mean?
I have never used that, so I have no idea.
Okay, because I was reading through 33315, and I don't know where in that statute it specifically identifies association leave. It's for professional leave, which I read through that whole thing trying to see where we found this out at, because I was trying to determine, is it the district paying or is it the LEA paying for a substitute? Because it doesn't make sense to me the way it's written.
To Trustee Grissom's point, we have never covered this section of the NA since I've been here, and I've never had to pay for more than a couple of days when people have gone to the delegate assembly. So this, not that we don't need to, but I think I would rather just write this down and address it next year, because we haven't addressed it in the 5 years. But I think maybe to clear it up for next year would be, I'll just put it on our issues to bring up for wording next year, if that's okay.
Not really, because my name needs to go on the document, and it bothers me that it's not understandable and I'm supposed to sign it.
Okay, so if you could suggest some wording, then I'm not sure which piece.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep going and then I can send this to you if you would like. Under bereavement, it's IV 0.54 0.5 bereavement. It says any exceptions to the immediate family definition must be approved by the superintendent or designee. It should clarify who appoints the designee. Is it the superintendent, the principal, or the LEA? Under family leave, the agreement and policy 5410 appear to be inconsistent. The 12-month look back isn't identified, nor is how to address the combined FMLA should both parents be employed with the district. The agreement should not supersede policy. It should be congruent with it, and it's not. The same thing with sick leave. It's not congruent with our policy. And then that rolls into the sick leave bank, because I don't understand, one, how we can do it, to who the sick leave council is, because it specifically states in there that the board appoints a sick leave council. And I know last year it wasn't done, and I don't know when it's done. It talks about the board, the guidelines, rules, and regulations should be subject to the approval of the Board of Trustees. And I don't know how often that's done or when it's been done. It doesn't make, I mean, it just doesn't seem, I don't know if it even should be appropriately in the negotiated agreement, or if it's a caveat of dealing with human resources. I don't know, but it just doesn't flow. Also, the agreement under G of the sick leave bank says that starting with days withdrawing during the 07-08 contract year, that's, what does that mean? I have a feeling it's just never been updated, but it needs to be, or the sentence needs to be removed.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have Lisa's in charge of the sick leave bank. And
Okay.
so I think I'm gonna have to be able to come back and have her and Brooke talk to you about this. So, and
Okay.
the FMLA, Brooke's pretty much an expert on that. So I think she would want to be able to talk to you about all of that.
Okay, but I would appreciate that, because my concern is it states in statute that employees may not donate their sick leave to another person or entity. So I know the sick bank's not a person, but I would assume it's sort of an entity. So I don't know how we can get around that. I don't know how it got created. I think it's a novel idea, and I see the benefit of it, but there's too much with it that's concerning. And then lastly, which I'm sure everyone's happy for, regarding the SWD, why would daily prep not be able to be built into their schedule?
We've had, when we did our issues that Trustee Regrisson was talking about, everyone presented their issues. This one keeps coming up because some parents are only available for certain times for like their IEP meeting. So there are times when they end up working through their prep and they don't have a prep. If it was a little bit higher caseload that year, some reason that they couldn't get their prep, it was just adding an option so that they wouldn't feel like they weren't getting their prep and everyone else was. There's just some extenuating circumstances with some SWD teachers that their half an hour duty-free prep sometimes would be taken up by, even by their own admission, like they needed to get testing done for a student, they needed to get a parent meeting done, they needed to be available to help with Johnny when he was having problems with the behavior. So we're gonna try, if it didn't happen, that there was plan B for them so that they felt like they were able to have everything that the other certified teachers did. This was just the IBB team's consensus that we were trying to provide that for them.
Okay, so I guess then it would, to me, respectively, it would go back to, do we have enough staff in the SWD department if their caseloads are so heavy that they can't have a prep? I mean, that doesn't make sense. And I know that interim SWD director Kelsey Badger stated that the caseload this year upcoming is going to be extremely high. And so I
We've probably seen on
appreciate.
the board agenda, we've added SWD. We've already added 4 SWD teachers that we've hired. We still have 1 open, but we've filled 3 of the 4 already for next year because they've gone up to, like she said, from below 11 to 13, over 13% now. So we've already hired staff for next year based on those new numbers. But it does fluctuate, and the services and the accommodations, there's just a lot that goes into it. And as an SWD teacher, sometimes they get pulled away, and we just wanted to validate that sometimes they don't get that prep, and we wanted them to be compensated if they didn't. So
Right, and I agree with doing that. I do agree with doing that, but I also don't agree with overworking teachers to the point where, you know, then you get burnout and people don't stay. I mean, if we don't have enough staff, I would think that would be more appropriate to hire an extra staff than to say it's okay to not give them their prep periods. So I just want to make sure that we're making it equitable for the students we serve as well as the teachers that work for us.
Yeah, we definitely try to add staff. I guess where the issue comes in that's run into, when you have a caseload and you're 3 or 4 kids over what would be ideal for your caseload, it's not enough to hire another teacher, which costs, an average teacher would be $75,000 with benefits. And for 3 or 4 kids over, we can't afford to add a whole nother teacher. We did look this year, we had an option to add a teacher at 3 schools that were slightly over and have a SWD teacher this year to add a teacher splitting between 3 schools. And the current teachers said, no, we do not want a new teacher split between the 3 schools to try to handle. We'd rather just do it ourselves and give us a little bit of para time to help with some of the students. They made the choice themselves that they did not want to add another teacher. So there's just, each individual case is really difficult until you get in the case and you see what the case, the IEP, what's required by law, what the progress monitor, there's just a lot to go into it. So it's a team decision. The principal weighs in, the teachers weigh in on it, Kelsey weighs in on it, the budget team weighs in on it. So it is a lot. There's a lot that goes into it for sure. I don't want to overwork because those SWD teachers have a lot on their plates and we don't want to overwork them.
No, and I know, I mean, especially like the person sitting next to you, a lot of people are overworked. So I see a lot of stipending going into this agreement, which, I mean, is beneficial for those that are stepping up. I just want to make sure that, you know, that's not our first go-to, that we're trying to resolve the problem. But I can send you all my other concerns with the way the agreement, things that were in the agreement that need to be reworded. Policies need to be identified because they have to be congruent. We can't have a policy that says one thing and this agreement say another, because it's my understanding the policy would trump the agreement.
It definitely, we need to know if the policy, if you found those, if you have those if you could just share those with me so that I can make sure and get on that tomorrow, so that, because if they're meeting with I should get on that tonight, because if they're meeting, if there's things that need to change, like I'll have to call Jason tonight and say, you need to know that there's some things in here that isn't going to pass a board approval, or some legitimate questions that we need to address before the ratification would go forward. So I would definitely give him a heads up tonight.
Okay, I'll do what I can.
Okay.
If I can get it to you tonight, otherwise it'll be tomorrow.
Okay. Perfect.
And that's it.
Thank you for bringing those up, Michelle. I do think it's really important, if we're not in line with the policy, if we're not in line with IDAPA, like those are really important things. And I think that we certainly do need to be in alignment with those. So thank you for taking the time to do that and
You're
bring that
welcome.
up.
Does anybody else have any other input regarding the agreement?
I do, like I said, being that we didn't, we just hit a handful of issues instead of looking at the agreement and creating a new agreement. The other part with the sick leave council, we need all the documentation on that also, because the board has to review it and approve it. It says the guidelines, rules, and regulations shall be subject to the approval of the Board of Trustees and the LEA. And we don't know anything about that. So wherever that lives, I'm not sure where that lives. The other thing is, I had it when I closed my window, like you're saying, just to make sure that we're staying in alignment with statute, with things that changed. And one of the things I think that changed is, well, I don't know, we don't call it a stipend, but I think we need to verify that the class size pay, or whatever you want to call it, that actually is in alignment with statute also, because I'm not sure that it is. It seems to me, and I was trying to find it, it seems to me that I read more recently that was part of the new language in negotiated agreements, was to remove some of that type of stipending, but I could be wrong.
Well, I did refer to DAPA rule and policy and statute. It's not in alignment at all. However, I know there needs to be some resolution for when that occurs.
Right.
I just don't like the thought that that's our only solution, is just to keep overcrowding classes.
Yeah.
And I know this was an off year, but I don't know, like from the past, how often it's occurring and what we're doing to resolve it. All right then. Any other things? Randy, do you have any input on the, okay.
Nope.
Okie dokie. Okay, then the next discussion item is the clerk of the board position. However, I don't know that there's much I don't know if there's much we need to discuss here. My intention in putting it on the agenda, there was a little miscommunication, was to actually have it done in executive session so that we could review the applicants and their materials. But does anybody have any input or thoughts to discuss on the clerk of the board position at this moment? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, I'll take that as a no. All right, so then that being said, perfect. With that being said, I do need an action item. I do. We're moving on to action items, which is to motion into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061A, B, and D. We will not be making any decisions in executive session. We'll just be motioning to go into executive session.
I move to enter into executive session per Idaho Code 742061A, B, and C.
I'll second
Oh,
that.
sorry, A, B, and D. I apologize.
Not a worry. I had a motion and a second. And we need a roll call vote.
Okay, Trustee Major,
Yes.
Trustee Bain,
Yes.
Trustee Grissom,
Yes.
Chairman Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, we're good. So I will pause the recording. I'm going to turn on the video.
Okay. Is there anybody still in the waiting room? I don't show that there are.
I only see 5 participants. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this computer, so I don't think there is anybody.
Okay.
Right side. So I think, let me open the door though, just in case anybody's out there.
No worries.
I don't see anybody out there, but we're good to go now.
Okay. So we have exited out of executive session, and I do need a motion stating that we have, how do we motion this? A motion that we have completed the annual evaluation of the superintendent.
I'll make a motion that we have completed the annual evaluation of the superintendent.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries, and the meeting is adjourning at 7:54.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, ladies.
Good night.
Bye.
I hope you two feel better.
Yeah, me too. Okay.